Check. All right, here we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Q&A, your daily dose of coffee Q&A here on the onocoffee channel. I'm Jay, your host, and we do this live stream typically most Monday through Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern. We've been a little bit sporadic these last few weeks, but we're back in the studio, as you can see, and we're going to be talking about some apples. In the fall here in the East Coast, I guess in the United States, or in most parts of the world, apples are a big deal. And so especially here, apples are quite popular. I grew up in this area, and I remember when I was young, my father would take us to this apple farm somewhere in Howard County out by Columbia, Maryland, where they would make the apple cider. It was really interesting because they would make this fresh apple cider. They would take the apples, they would chop them up, grind them up, so they look like this big brown paste, pulpy matter. They pump it from this big hose onto these big, kind of like if you can imagine like the type of screens that you're using for screen printing, something like that, but bigger. And they would do multiple stacks of those, and then they would have this big press that would press it all out, and you get fresh apple cider. Loved it. I always loved the fall because of that. Mom, good morning to you. Kent, how are you doing? Good to see you. And so I thought, every season I like to get some apples, and I don't remember what the farm was in Howard County anymore. It's been such a long time. Maybe they're gone. I haven't looked, but I did find a new place in Baltimore County that's closer to where I live, a place called Weber's Cider Mill Farm. And they're really a local farm, and they grow a lot of their own apples right around their farm area, right? I think they do work with some farmers that are in the area, as well as their own plots of land, and they grow different varieties of apples. And if you go there earlier in the season, like towards the end of summer, beginning of fall, they've got a huge selection. Of course, as the months go by, until you get to the late December, the amount of apples, it starts to dwindle, right? Because people are consuming them. And one of the nice things, if you get apples, a lot of them are pretty hardy. So if you keep them in a cool, dark place, they'll last for a long time. And I thought that we'd have a little bit of tasting of apples that are available right now here in the Maryland area. The ones that are available in your part of the world may be different, but let's go have a look at them. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the other day I was there. We have 8, right? 8, and I just basically went through and got everything that they have marked as they grow themselves. And so what we have here, we've got some apples. We've got the Fuji apple, starting over here. Fuji apple, Evercrisp, Stamen Wine Sap, Cameo, Ambrosia, Pink Lady, Gala, and something called Crimson Crisp. So these are some of the popular apples that are in this area. Power Plant, good morning to you as well. And, there's different flavors, different profiles, different textures that happen here. They did have Granny Smith, but the Granny Smith were from somewhere else outside of our region. So we're not going to bother with that. But I thought we would taste these and have a little taste of them all. And then we're going to see how it pairs with coffee, right? Like it seems like an odd thing to do. We're going to do that. And then I also have some donuts to go with the coffee, right? These donuts here. And then I have a couple of versions of apple cider. And I'm thinking that apple cider and espresso is the way to go, especially this time of year. And this could be something, we'll even do it this way. We'll even do some hot versions of this drink to see just how it might work out, right? George, good morning. How are you? How are you doing today? If we end up in Shippensburg, yeah. Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. All right, so let's have a look here. We'll start off with the Fuji. Now, the Fuji, of course, is an apple. Let me look this up here, make sure I got it right. That this is a cultivar that was developed by the growers at the Tohoku Research Station back in 1939. And it's originated as a cross between two American varieties, the Red Delicious and the Rails Janet, and was brought to the market in 1962. I'm reading all this from Wikipedia, of course. And its name is derived from the first part of the town where it's developed, which is called Fujisaki. The flavor is supposed to be sweet, and its texture is crisp and can be used to make applesauce. And it is one of the most popular apple cultivars in the United States, according to the U.S. Apple Association. Those are the serious guys about apples. Let's zoom in a little bit more here. So we're going to cut into it. Good resistance, nice and resistive. Come on. I don't know why I want to cut a wedge out of it, but I just feel like I want to be frugal with them. There we go. So you can see here, this is the interior, a little bit greenness on there. So it was brought to market since 1962. So it's been out for like, what, 70 years and very popular. Let's have a taste of it. I would say it's not very crisp. I mean, maybe it doesn't have that crunch. It's got a good solid resistance. I like crispiness. A good amount of like brightness, acidity to it. And the sweetness is relatively reserved. Good apple flavor, but I would say reserved in the sweetness. All right, let's move on and see about the next one, which is something called Evercrisp. And Evercrisp, which is this one here, this kind of greenish red thing. Now, the Evercrisp is the trademark name of Maya 1, an American cultivated apple variety or cultivar developed by the Midwest Apple Improvement Association. So Maya is Midwest Apple Improvement Association, MAIA. This is a cross between the Honeycrisp. Do we have Honeycrisp? We don't have ever. Between the Honeycrisp and the Fuji. I don't know why they didn't just call it Fuji Crisp or, a lot of times with like even coffee, we'll like hybridize the name based on the cultivars that are being hybridized. But anyway, originally produced only in Ohio, the Evercrisp is now cultivated across the United States and entered the public marketplace in 2017. Oh, wow, really? And it was started by Mitch Lind of Lind Fruit Farms in Pataskala, Ohio, during the late 1990s. So this is a very, very new type of apple. So let's get a taste of it. Oh, goodness. What am I doing? I think I never cut apples before. Probably haven't. Usually just bite them. There we go. So look inside here. Now, if it's a hybrid of the Fuji, yeah, they look similar. I have no idea. They don't know who knows. So there is our slice. Parkville says, back in California, was lucky to live near Washington, the best apples in the world. Nice. And at some Costco, you can get Cosmic Crisp, the ultimate. Oh, a Cosmic Crisp. I don't think I've had that one. Good morning to you, Coffee Cove. Good to see you. Power says that all these apples have millions of R&D behind them. Oh, for sure, for sure. Slightly more crisp. Oh, and sweeter than the Fuji without as much brightness. Oh, I like that. The sweetness appeals to me. Not bad. All right, let's move on to our next one, which is called the Stamen Winesap, or at least the Weber's Farms called it the Stamen Winesap. It is actually can be called just a stamen, depending on who you're talking to. Now, this is a triploid apple cultivar developed in 1866. So we're talking about one that was developed just in the last decade to one that was developed, 2 centuries ago. Well, not 2 centuries, you know what I mean. In 1866 by Joseph Stamen of Leavenworth County, Kansas. It was sold by nurseries from 1895 and is a popularly cultivar of apples locally there. So it's medium-sized, roundish, conic apple. So yeah, very round. That's true. Thick green, yellowish skin covered almost with entirely deep red blush. Oh yeah, okay. That's pretty much what this is. Darker red stripes and russet dots. I guess these are the russet dots here. The stem cavity also often shows heavy russeting with a firm, tender, finely textured, juicy, crisp, yellowish green. The flesh is tart and spicy. Spicy, nice. They keep well and are used primarily as dessert apples, but also make a fine addition to blended cider. Oh, that's interesting. And that's one of the things, like the ciders that we're going to have. One of them, I think, is a blend. And I didn't think about it when I was picking it up to ask them what their blend of apples are in the cider. But it makes sense. You're taking apples, you're making a cider, right? You have an idea of your cider. So just like wine, just like coffee blending, you're going to take your apples, you're going to understand what they taste like, and then you're going to blend them in the proportion that you need to create the greater whole that you're seeking. So I think that's kind of fascinating, right? Let me wipe this off here. Okay, that cut off a lot easier. That's good. Of course, the one that I want to see the interior, we don't get to see that because I didn't cut it correctly enough. All right, there we go. Do we have any russeting? I don't know what that means, but perhaps we do. All right, let's give it a taste. Bubble Butter's with us. What's the geisha? So what's the geisha? I would say the geisha apple variety has to be the Fuji. Right? I don't think they grow apples in Ethiopia. So, yeah, and I don't know. I'm not well versed in apples. I'm reading. I may be sounding like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm reading off of Wikipedia. Wikipedia is my friend. You know what I mean? All right, let's look here. This is so what did it say? It said that it's supposed to be firm, tender, finely textured, juicy, crisp, and yellowish green. So I would say it's definitely yellowish green. All right, let's give it a taste. So softer in texture than the Evercrisp. Really soft comparably. So whereas the Fuji has a lot of brightness to it, the Evercrisp has lower brightness, more rounded intense sweetness. This wine sap, I don't like the texture as much. I like crispy apples. I don't like mushy apples. Not to say this is mushy, but it's definitely not crisp. It definitely has that softer. Like I can kind of break it down just by pressing my tongue to the top of the roof of the mouth. It does have a brightness to it to go with the sweetness. In many respects, I think the brightness and the sweetness is better balanced than the other two. And it does have a little bit of a spiciness to it, maybe like a hint, a suggestion of cayenne, kind of like sharpness to it. All right, let's have a look at our next one here. We're going to move on to the Cameo. Down, baby ladies, around the world. I don't know if maybe that might not land with a lot of people. Parkville says in Japan, they judge apples by bisecting them horizontally in the middle. They look at the mitsu or dark star-shaped area around the core. The bigger, the better. Oh, that's kind of an interesting way. Let's try that. We'll try that. Well, we'll do this first, and then we'll try that later. So that way we're all even. That's an interesting way to look at it. I hadn't even thought about how to really core it. Easier. So this is the Cameo. And what do they say about the Cameo? Cameo is a cultivar of apple, that was discovered by chance by the Cottle family in Dryden, Washington orchard in 1987. Wow, in 1987. So when I was graduating high school, after I graduated high school, they discovered this. Its parentage is uncertain. It may be a cross between Red Delicious and Golden Delicious, since it was found near orchards of those fruits. It also appears similar to the original Delicious cultivar. It has red skin with orange and yellow stripes. We're not getting so much orange yellow striping, but that's all right. A dense texture and tart, crisp, aromatic flavor, suitable for eating fresh, salads, and baking. It is among the top 9 most grown apples in the Washington state. So I would imagine that power plant has had this Cameo apple before. Looking at that with a yellow texture, tart, crisp, aromatic flavor. Okay, let's see. Tart. Huh. So, not the crispiness of the Fuji, but not the softness of the stamen. More somewhere in between. And there is moderately sweet. Actually, kind of attractive. Like I kind of want to have another slice. And just a little bit of brightness, a little bit of tardiness to that. Okay. Prabhupada says the prefectures of Aomori and Iwate are famous for also famous for apples. Excellent, excellent. Is that where you're not in those parts of the country, are you? Let's go to the next one, which is an apple called Ambrosia. And this is an apple that originated in Canada in the early 1990s. Well, there's so many things that have happened in my lifetime. Like I just always presumed that apples have been around for generations upon generations, but so far 3 of these have happened in the last 40 years. Strange. The original tree was first cultivated by the Minnell family in Cawston, British Columbia, who discovered it growing from a chance seedling in the orchard in a row of Jonah Gold apples. It is named after the mythical food of the Greek gods. Its color, juice content, sweetness, and overall flavor have made the Ambrosia one of the most purchased apples in numerous countries. Oh, look at that. What else do they say about this thing? It has losing my tags here. It is it's cream colored, firm, juicy texture with sweet flavor reminiscent of pear and low acidity with the flesh resisting oxidation, making it suitable for salads and fresh fruit displays. Oh, nice. All right, let's do the yellow section because that looks kind of interesting. I feel like my cutting technique is dangerous. Ooh. One of the issues with white things like this that are very light is that it's difficult to get the right exposure for everything else, and then you hit it with this and it's like it blows it out. But it does have kind of a yellow color to it, so let's have a taste. Sweet flavor reminiscent of pear. There is some of that. There is more of a pear-like texture, like less ripe pear. Like, you know how pears get really ripe and they get really kind of soft? This is less ripe. More green pear texture. But low acidity, sweet. Nice flavor. I think maybe this is the flavor of apple that I would, if I was to think about flavor of apple, I probably would think of this if I'm thinking about it. But in actual execution of eating, I think I enjoy maybe like the Fuji or the Evercrisp more. Maybe the statement, because I want something a little bit more, maybe like more of the Evercrisp, a little bit sweeter, not too bright. This is not too bright, but just something like that. All right, our next one is something called the Pink Lady. Where's the Pink Lady? Pink Lady over here, Pink Lady. And the Pink Lady is one of the several cultivars sold under the trademark Pink Lady. Well, actually, I'm sorry. This is actually known as the Cripps Pink. It was originally bred by John Cripps in Western Australia Department of Agriculture at their Stoneville Research Station. And it was a crossing between the Australian Lady Williams and the American Golden Delicious. So Pink Lady or Cripps Pink, their nomenclature is kind of odd. I would like to call it, if it was me and I was doing it, the Lady Williams, Lady Delicious. That's what I do. I would call it Lady Delicious, so you can eat your Lady Delicious all day long. The result is a combination of a long, firm, long-standing property of Lady Williams with the sweetness and lack of storage scald of Golden Delicious. It's owned and licensed by the Department of Ag of Western Australia, which had a plant breeder's rights in multiple countries. What else do they know about it? Let's see here. They don't really say anything about it, though. I like flavor-wise in this one. Oh, there it is. Ellipsoidal shape, distinct blush mixed with green background and the tart taste. But it does require long 200-day growth and hot climate. So I don't know if Maryland is actually a great place for this. All right, let's go here. One of the nice things I think that when you buy apples at a regular kind of place is that you see things like this, like these blemishes, these like blights on the fruit. That kind of tells you that, oh, you're dealing with real farms growing real stuff. Like if you look at the apples that grow on my property, like they look terrible. They're not the pretty stuff. They're not the beautiful red, golden delicious that you see in the grocery store. Oh, let's have a look here at the texture. Can't really see it still. Oh, very crisp, very resistive. And there's a sprightly kind of brightness, but it's not. It's sharp, but it's also very reserved. So the sharpness, the brightness is similar to the Fuji. Interesting. Nice. That's nice. That's nice. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We're going to go to the Gala apple. Where's the Gala? This is the Gala. I like the color of the Gala. Like it has such a pronounced color compared to the rest. So it has a sweet malt flavor with a crisp but not hard texture and a striped or mottled orange and reddish appearance. I kind of like that. Originating from New Zealand in the 1930s, similar to most named apples, it is cyanally propagated. It is cyanally propagated, which I don't know what that means. Easy to grow, the Gala is one of the most top commercial varieties today and is most popular in North America. So Galas are non-uniform in color, usually vertically striped or mottled, which we see here, with an overall orange color. I guess they want to be an orange. They have cream or white flesh, which is sweet, fine-textured, and aromatic. They are especially suitable for sauces. Okay, let's go in here let's get the part that is, both kind of orangey and kind of yellowish that color here. PowerPoint says the bad thing about new apples is that they are propagated by cuttings, so they are able to be wiped out easily by blight. Oh my. Andrew's with us. Good morning to you. George says, from what I recall about russeting is that it is a sticky skin surface secondary layer that develops typically from damage, but it's not really a negative, aside from cosmetics, and can add nutty flavors. Oh, interesting. All right, cool. When I was younger, it was Pink Ladies apples all day long. I can see why. Crisp Pink are the varietal, but the Pink Lady is a trademark strain according to Google AI. Coffee Cove says, I grew up reading mostly Red Delicious, me too. But taste bud change and it's too sweet for me. I like Honey Crisp or Gala. I'm enjoying this. I don't have Honey Crisp or Ever Crisp here, but the Gala, we're going to find out about the Gala. So comparatively, it's like no acidity at all. Like the brightness is very, 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 very mild. Like not even. It's sweet. This texture of the texture of the fruit is soft. It's very nice sweetness. Like I could eat more. And I would not be upset if I was eating this as an apple. But I think if I were looking for an adventure of apple, it doesn't quite. The texture is a little bit soft for me, right? I think I'm enjoying this. While I'm not really a bright person in terms of what I like in foods, I'm finding that maybe some of the ones that have more brightness and sweetness and crisper texture are kind of more in my wheelhouse, but I do like the color. All right, now the last one we're going to be doing is called the Crimson Crisp. The Crimson Crisp. And Crimson Crisp is... Here it is. It's a mid-season apple that is great for eating and baking with a sweet yet spicy taste to it and a creamy white flesh and crisp bite. I don't have a Wikipedia entry for this one. I just got it from one of the other orchards websites. Palma Butter says, my coffee also has nice sweetness. My first Tanzanian coffee. Oh, nice, nice. George says, good bite, that one. All right, let's try it. Let's try it. Oh. So it starts off with a nice crisp, like a nice snap. That's interesting. Snap and then softness. Snap, softness. Mild to medium in brightness. Good sweetness. Not bad. Not bad. I kind of like it. I actually bought two of them because I like the color. My plan was to eat one in the car when I bought it, but then I got the donuts and I ate one of those. All right, so that's our general tasting of the different apple varieties. I would have to say that I think of these, maybe the Evercrisp will be my favorite of these. Maybe. I think that's the one that I think. Yeah, there's a good crispness to it, good snap, just a very, very light, almost no acidity. For me, a lot of this texture. I like texture. Yeah. I'm going to say my favorite so far is Evercrisp. Now, let's go and have a look at the, what do we call it? At our ciders. We got two different ciders here. This is their standard cider from Weber's Farm. I got the link down below if you want to check it out. So we have regular cider, and then they have a separate one they make. This is like single origin cider, fresh, just honey crisp apples. I remember they came out with this several years ago. I don't remember exactly why. I mean, or what the reasons were. I think just to, because they wanted to. And let's have a tasting of these. Does that look not so clean? Better. I'm going to pour this. Ooh, there's definitely a color difference, right? Like you can see that color difference. Super apparent. It's super apparent. For some reason, for the last month, I've had the sniffles. Oh, there's definitely this is definitely sharper on the nose. This is sweeter on the nose, sweeter balanced, sweet but sharp. Right? I don't know if that's the best way to actually taste this. That's better. So this, the blend, definitely much more apple cidery, good rounded, balanced, a little bit of brightness, good sweetness, and the honey crisp. Not as much body, a little bit brighter. Sweetness is good, flavor is good, but definitely different. Like this is rounder, fuller, more like just more of a whole. Yeah, that's definitely, it feels thinner, right? It feels thinner, less oomph. All right, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take this and we're going to make with coffee. Right? With coffee is the way we're going to go. Anyways, that's what's going on, Naomi. Apple tasting, good morning. Yes, we have apple tasting going on here. My favorite is Smitten Apple. Smitten Apple, I've not even heard of that one. But the very best tasting one I have is a Fuji Apple in Japan. One of the higher quality ones. I could, those guys are probably selling it for like $100 for one. Coffee Cove says Fuji is good too. Everclear seems like a winner, says George. At least so far as biting into it. Cooking apples requires other qualities. Oh yes, absolutely. 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 I don't really cook too much with apples, so I don't think I would be able to be a good commentary on that. All right, so let's go. We're going to make some espresso. I've got some of the Spro 99 loaded up into the hopper here. The machine has been heating up, so we should be good to go. Let me just grab some. I haven't made espresso in months. Actually, I made espresso. Oh, I got to make that video. I made espresso over the weekend with the Ninja espresso machine. My friend just got one. She was like, do you know how to use this? I was like, no, but we're going to make something with it. And, I got to say, just if you're thinking about getting the Ninja, it's like all Ninja products. It makes it so simple, right? They got the grinder built into it. You take and they kind of walk you through it. You have to do certain things to get it to work. But as long as you do that, it actually makes fairly decent results. Like actually, it was interesting because the first drink that I made on it actually was pretty decent. I made a cappuccino milk. It does its own auto steaming. Takes a long time, but worked pretty good. But I couldn't replicate it for whatever reason. I don't know. So I tried a couple more times, and I just thought the results were terrible. But you'd have to play. I only made 3 drinks on it, so I can't. That's not indicative of what you could get out of it. All right, so let's go over here. We're going to go to what camera are we going to go to? We're going to go to camera 3. Here we are. I got this view here. So we're going to pull a test shot. There's our coffee. How much coffee is it? I don't know. We're going to find out. Actually, we're not going to find out because we're not going to measure it. We're just going to tamp it and see. See how they're a little sputtering, a lot of like whatever. I kind of let that flow through a little bit. You can hear the bubbling. Lock and load. Uh-oh, what are we looking? Well, that could be better. That could be better. Let's go over here and see. But not bad. But, no, actually, not terrible. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to try pulling the shots into the drinks. That should be good. And then we're going to see what happens. George asks, is it possible that the darker colored cider has some additives? I don't think so. I mean, like, there's always that possibility, but I think these guys are fairly reputable that I wouldn't necessarily worry that there's anything. I think it's just more like, when you're dealing with different apples that have more oxidation properties. I imagine that the Honeycrisp doesn't have as much oxidation properties as the other varieties. And I remember when I was younger going to that place in Howard County, by the time they pumped it into the presses, it had already oxidized because the pulp was all like brown. So that would be my guess on it, at least. Bummer Brown says it was a little bit fast, but we can compensate for that. All right, let's go back to here. Puck looks pretty good though. Oh, that's nice and tight. In this case, like, let's say I thought it's a little bit fast. Not too bad, because it's look at that, just a little bit of oil, which means that we probably got the best extraction out of it. Let that rest for a moment. Now, typically, like, let's say if I'm working at a bar situation, I would not necessarily weigh it anymore. Like, I would just roll with that. And if I wanted to make an adjustment, like basically, like if Bumble Buddha's like, it was a little bit fast. If I wanted to go and get a little bit slower, like I would look at this, right? So that shows me that I stopped at the right point. We had a good amount of coffee in there. And now this is where might think that there's always a temptation. I could add a little bit more to get that to slow down just a little bit more. I don't think I would do that. I would pull a couple more shots, right, to see how it performs. But if it continued that way, I might actually, that's when I would look to making an adjustment to the grind. Now, one of the things that I do realize when we're talking about things like this is that, I'm talking about a professional situation where I'm making drinks nonstop or, relatively consistently throughout a day part. So if I pull a shot and I think that maybe it could be slightly fast and I might need to make an adjustment, I will have other orders to pull that I can decide whether or not to make that adjustment or see if it really does need an adjustment. Whereas someone like an enthusiast, like a lot of you who are at home making drinks, you don't necessarily have that luxury of multiple shots in a row. Like in those cases, you're just burning your coffee, and I totally understand. So, I would, definitely recommend to consider weighing it and things like that. I tend to be a little bit cavalier in things like this. Right, let's get coffee in here. But we're going to see. I'm treating it as though we were doing this in my normal environment. So just make that mound there. This is what I don't like about working at home. It makes a mess. Okay, so now we're going to take our cider, pull off this. We don't want to fit it under. I like to pull the shots directly into it. Oops. Nobody's asking which means is it using the Espresso 99. This is actually just leftover stuff that I have from actually probably a month or two ago. It's kind of old. See, you can see it. It's a little bit on the blonde side. It's not as cohesive as it normally is. I think this was a batch that was left over for one of the clients, and I just kind of replaced it with fresher coffee, and I took it with me. So there it is. We're going to go over here. Whoops. So the crema could be a lot better, right? So I think that maybe now we're going to look at this. Now I'm going to look at this and I think maybe more, I would be tempted to say more coffee, but at least probably go a little bit finer on the grind. So here's where we would actually start to make the change. Now, one of the things that you want to keep in mind as you're thinking about making your changes to your coffee grinders, depending on the coffee grinder you have, This particular one, these Mazders, when you're going finer, you're contracting the burrs together. So you want to turn the machine on as you go. So I'm going to make that quick adjustment. Let it bleed through a little bit. And clear out this old coffee. Now, if you look here, this is the coffee that I'm dumping. That's at least a puck's worth of coffee. And, you know, this is where I kind of have to remember, I try to remember that the difference is, like, I'm going to dump this, and I wouldn't think twice about dumping it, because typically we're in a mission critical situation where, you know, this could represent potentially thousands of dollars in future business, right? Like, let's presume this coffee was not, would comprise a shot that was not great, that was not acceptable, that would be whose consumption would diminish the experience of the guest that came in. Let's say this is worth $1, right? Like there was a time when it cost us about $1 to make each shot. So I'm throwing out $1. And if I do that 20 times a day, 50 times a day, there's that much in lost inventory. But the thought is that you're getting rid of that because you're trying to produce a coffee that's really of high quality, one that will encourage enthusiasm in the guests so that they will want to return multiple times again. And that $1 that you just tossed, and the time that it took for the barista to toss it. So let's say that shot costs you $2.50, or maybe just $2, right? If the guest comes back multiple times again and again, talks well about your shop and like the people that work for you and do everything, and they bring their friends, that little cost was minor compared to the potential impact that it could have, either positively or negatively. So if I see operators and they're like, oh, I can't throw this away. What are you going to do with it? If you're going to serve it and it tastes terrible, and they don't come back, well, it just costs you well more than that little amount of money. Promo says, modern bars also get increasingly good options for grind weight by sink. By sink? Coffee Maker in Basel actually has an interesting setup in their new location at the station. Instead of a 2-group gastro machine, they have 2 Sanremo U's. You mean, I'm presuming you mean, I'm not familiar with a Sanremo machine lineup. I'm presuming you mean like 2 single machines. Is that correct? I mean, I like that. I mean, that's, you know, that I think that way it allows you to attack multiple fronts more readily. Like the old school way of doing it is having one huge machine, working both sides of it. But that's not necessarily as efficient as, you know, because then you got everybody, all of your guests are kind of jumbled together, and you can have like traffic. So, all right, so let's go here. One of the things about, you know, when you're using non-water as a liquid for Americano type drinks is the way that the reaction of the crema to the liquid. Like under most circumstances, like an Americano, this would have broken while I was babbling away about nonsense. So here it's holding and fairly crusting over. It looks like it's crusty in spots, right? Now, honestly, I would like this to be darker. Like, look at that. It's like tectonic plates moving. Ooh, that's fairly nice. I think we've made this for customers in the past, because this time of year we would actually stock this at Spro in our refrigerator. So you come in and get hot spice cider. We could add some like cinnamon to it if you wanted, and we would steam it as well. All right, that's interesting. A little bit of bitterness, you know, balanced with the sweetness. Now let's see what it's like with this Honeycrisp cider. Now it's going to be a little bit different, I imagine, because we did make a change to the grind of the coffee. So there's going to be that impact on what we're doing. So let's have a look here. Puck looks nice and solid. That's what we want to see. Oh, this one's even better. Look, no residual oils. What do you think about this? So I just kind of set this up really fast. And it does sit in the way of like the countertop because basically the camera's on a small tripod sitting right on the counter. But is this angle better? Do you like this better than the overhead that we used to use? I took the boom arm that this camera used to sit on above the machine, and I used it for something else. So that's why we're not using it now. Okay, so we got this all cleaned out. Now let us go and grind more coffee. Now the last couple of times I was pretty heavy on leaving a mound. I'm a little bit hesitant to do that now, only because we did adjust the grind, so it might be a little bit more problematic, but I'm still going to leave it. I'm still going to leave that much on there. For the most part, after so many years, I really just kind of go with this mostly by feel. Go. And that flow looks a little bit better. There that is. Shoot. All right, there we are. I just had a big sneeze and spilled a bunch of it on the floor. Oh, my goodness. Give me just a moment to wipe it out. I try to turn off the taking care of those things. All right, so here we are. We've got our coffee. This still looks light. I wonder if it's reacting somehow with the apple cider. We're not going to talk so much this time, but let's have a taste. Huh. No. Interesting. Like maybe because the two blends are different, right? The two blends of apple ciders are very different. But this one, I think my initial impression is that I like this blend. I like this combination better than I like this. I think that's actually kind of nice and lighter and brighter. Sweeter. Huh. Surprising. George says he prefers the new angle, gives us more access. Okay, good. We'll probably do this more often whenever we do the espresso making. Because I do feel like that is, even I feel that this is, now that I'm seeing it on the screen here, I feel that's better. It just gets a little bit more into it. Like I felt it was so far away, but I was even when it was pretty far away, we're pretty much at the. I think we were even still then at a pretty far on the zoom capabilities. All right, let's go have a look at the. Puck is solid. Maybe a little bit over extracted. See that? A little bit right there. A little bit over extraction. Now, one of the things I think is fun to do is to take your picture and now I just like this on your own. And this is one of the nice things that having an espresso machine in your home is that you can make hot cider rather quickly. So let's go look. And it's really simple. We just kind of go back here, purge the wand. Let me get rid of this. And then go in with it. Now it does make a lot of noise. Maybe not. I guess there's enough solubles in the liquid. When you do water like this, it really screams. Oh, that's good. So just got that. And it does lighten it a little bit, at least because I guess there's now air injected into it. Kind of like foamy beer of some sort. Oh, that's nice. I probably should have bought a gallon instead of just a pint or a quart. This is what you want. Like you make it hot and then you go sit outside with a blanket, maybe a cigar. Oh, that's nice too. Paraplan says, just had to help with a tire change. Never fun, but it is a good skill to know. I think it's important. My niece, who's now 15, is going to be driving soon. So I need to make sure that she knows how to do that. Of course, I don't really need to do that. My brother is like a world-class mechanic. Like he's like an expert in all things mechanical and BMW, like especially BMW. So I don't really, it's not like he can't teach her. So, and when it comes to motor things for my niece, then I have been out in the cold. All right, so let's go to, finally we're going to go to one of our last things we're going to do. And that is one of my favorites. And that is, let me just make some space here. The apple cider donuts. Here we are, apple cider donuts. Now, apple cider donuts are something that's a relatively new kind of thing, right? Like they've actually, commercially they're relatively new, but they've been around since like the colonial times. So it's been around because you've got dough that you can fry, and you've got apples, and people that lived in the 1700s, it's not like today they go to the grocery store. They just needed to eat and survive through the winter. So whatever they had, they could mix. So if they got a little bit of flour, they got a little bit of water, they got a little bit of sugar, or if they got some apples, they can mash that up, mix it all together, and then cook it, right? Traditionally, I think typically the apple cider donuts are baked rather than fried. In this case, I don't know. I didn't ask, and in buying for yours, I think this is baked. I think it's baked. Maybe it's fried. I can't remember. But either way, I really like these apple cider donuts. I like them so much. They're made by the bakery at Weber Farms, and we would buy these every year. This time of year at Spro, we would offer them as part of our menu. Instead of making them ourselves, these guys made great ones. And I really was happy to have them. And it was always kind of a difficult thing not to eat them myself. So typically they're donuts, cake donuts, and they usually put cinnamon, nutmeg, and apple cider together in the batter, and then just bake it up. It's a good one. So what do we have with this now? Apples with apple cider seems to be a little bit on the nose, which I'm not against it. I'll drink it with Coca-Cola for all I care. But I think coffee is a great way to go. So we're going to make my favorite Americano, which is the short Americano. And we're going to make that using the 6-ounce cup. So what's my favorite Americano? It's my favorite Americano because you know what? When I was the apprentice, learning the trade, learning the craft, I would fly out to Seattle to go hang out with my mentors, the two Johns at Heinz Public Market Coffee. And I would stay at their place and I would hang out and learn. And and do a little bit of drink making. And I remember I would sit there, like the shop would open like at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. I'd be sitting there 6:30 in the morning, and the light would come through the big bay windows in the front of the shop, and I would sit there. I would make a drink. I would sit on the tables drinking this and listening to The Chronic by Dr. Dre. And basically, what it is just a 6-ounce Americano with the shot floater on top. I guess if you were to ask me what's my favorite drink, this would be my favorite drink. Like, this is, to me, quintessentially what I remember learning the craft many, many years ago. So let's make it. I've got some hot water that was on the boil. We're going to just go over here. Oh, you know what I need to do? I need to. Did we clean this up? We didn't clean this up fully. Okay, that's ready. Now, this drink, I really want to have like a hardcore. Oh, this is the problem. You're not. This is the problem. See here? See that? Look at that. That's because I was not careful in where I was putting the wand, and the wand dripped water between the two machines, and now the tamper was wet. Okay, let's start over. This is why you have to be careful with how you use the machine. Okay, there we go. Here we go again. I'm going to use this tamper that's clean. And sometimes if you want, you could wipe it on your shirt. That's really old school technique right there. Okay, that's how we. Okay, now we put that aside. Cup. Agua. Shot. One of the things about the E61 group is they just don't have as much space as the Momozoku group has. Come on, baby. See, the stream's a little bit runny. I would like it to be tighter. So I would probably, if future shots, I'll probably tighten up the grind a little bit more. Yeah, like we're not getting as much color. Like you can probably see a little bit light on the color. Like that should be darker brown. And maybe that could be a factor of the coffee being a little bit on the older side. But I think we're just not getting enough extraction. So I'm gonna go. I would go if we were continuing on. I would probably go with more. What do you call it? I would probably go with more finer grind, but this will suffice for today. So you can see that even though I've got all this years in the field and in the saddle, I still don't always make the most perfect shots all the time. It's just how it happens. Just how it happens. Oh yeah, okay. PowerPlan says the aeration of juice will improve taste and texture, but ruin longevity. Luckily, you can drink it fast. Yes, exactly. We want to drink it very fast. Bumble Butter says the only skill incapable is tired. Coffee Cove's asking, do you purge the wine after? Leave it to you guys to call me out on every little thing that we're ignoring. Yes, normally I would purge the wine. However, the reason I didn't purge the wine is because I don't have a wand towel available at the moment. And I'm kind of putting that aside because I'm like, well, I'm not going to make any more drinks with it. So I'm not really worried about that for this particular episode. But normally I would keep a little saucer with a wet towel folded on top. And actually I like to fold it in a way where, like, let's see, this was wet. Like I like it to be wet and squeezed out. Like some people like it too dry. I don't like it too dry. So I would keep it folded like this, right? And on a plate. Let's say this is the plate. So I would keep it like this. So that way I would grab onto it pick it up, and then see how it's like folded like that. Then I would open it, bring it around, right? Wipe the wand. And actually, I would use my thumb at the very end as I'm coming off. I would actually roll the thumb underneath the tip, the bottom of the tip, because a lot of times if you don't do that, a lot of people will miss the bottom of the tip, and buildup of milk will scalded milk will continue to build and become rancid. So that's what I would do. And I liked it that way, right? Because I pick it up, come around this way, do this thing, and I like to twist as I stroke, right? And then come around the bottom, and then be done. And then I still like this, right? And then I can just put it back down, and it'll be ready to go for the next time. And that's kind of that's kind of how we keep. But today, since I don't have a need to clean it more, I'll just clean it after the live stream. Proctor says ATK says the best cider donuts need to reduce the cider before adding. Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. There's too much water in the regular cider. Yeah, you do too much hydration on your batter. Just like fresh brewers should be cooked down before added to blend buff. I don't know if I believe in that, though. I have found very good results by not necessarily having to do that. Coffee Co says, yes, that's a good skill to know. When we turned 16 and started to drive, Dad taught us how to change tires. Came in handy. Oh, yeah, for sure. I had to learn it on my own. My father did not teach me how to do that. I mean, my parents didn't really drive until they came to America, so we're all still relatively new to that. Although dried cider donuts are preferable, since they are cake donuts, they could be baked in a form. Yes, and I tried calling the bakery this morning. They sent me the voicemail. I was like, come on, man. I want to find information about this. Like I was trying to call them to get, what are the apples in this, and are these baked or are they fried? But let's get into it and see what they have to say. Like, this is the donut. Let's break it open and see. Now, honestly, this is 2 days old. I did buy it on Tuesday, so these aren't in perfection form. But you know what? We're on a TV show. Like, I'm Gordon Ramsay, and I don't really have to tell you that, but I can just, extrapolate and, demonstrate how my reaction was 2 days ago when it was softer. The flavor's still nice. Oh, look at the crumb. So the crumb, see the way that it's cracked here? Actually, I don't know. Was it fried? Maybe. Okay, let's have some coffee with that. Okay, that's a winner. Even though that shot may not have been perfect, still solid combination. And one of the things I was saying, because about like it's not as soft. So unlike commercial donuts like Entenmann's and all that, or Hostess, which if you give me a bag of the mini powdered donuts, I could probably house that bag in just a little while. Those are all have preservatives, so they're able to maintain their texture and softness for a very long time, where this is being a locally and fresh made product. Does not have all the preservatives. So you do want to consume them fairly quickly. Which they're good enough that you don't really, it's not really a hardship to do that. Parkville says it was a K car, so barely bigger than a mountain bike. I saw a guy yesterday with one of the K trucks. When I saw it, I was like, look at that tiny truck. And then I noticed, it must be a K truck, because I noticed the guy, I couldn't see the driver, because I was driving up to him coming this way, right? And I couldn't see the driver initially because he was a little bit canted. I was like, oh, must be the right-hand drive. I said, that's awesome. I want to get one of those. Oh, speaking of which, there's a video that I posted this morning about a Zassenhaus grinder. I've got this idea. So Matt, my friend, had a tree fall down. He took a tree down in his house, and he had this guy cut out a chair from the big stump. Like the stump was huge. So this chainsaw artist came out and chainsawed a chair from this one big chunk of wood. But in doing so, he came out with a bunch of chunks. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like one chunk of this red oak is like this. And I was like, it just looks cool. And I was like, bandsaw box. Right? I was thinking bandsaw box. But I was thinking it should be something coffee related because I'm working on that. Like you guys know, I'm working on this idea for a bandsaw box of a coffee grinder. But the coffee grinding mechanism I have is very small. And I was like, that's too small. I mean, this thing is like massive. It's like this. It's like this. Like, that would be an epic box, like just epic. Crazy to actually make, but like, because the bandsaw box, you have to cut it out of one big piece. But I'm like, I want to make a coffee grinder. So I'm looking at coffee grinders online. And I see I see a bunch of those enterprise grinders, those big flywheel grinders, single or double, that Fuji Royal made them as well. And those are kind of pricey. Like some of them are like $300, $400, $500. I was like, ooh, that's a lot of money to pay for a grinder. I know you guys pay a lot more for grinders, for hand grinders, but I'm just like, I'm kind of cheap, right? So I'm like, I don't want to spend that kind of money. I came across this person that was selling a table, a coffee grinder table for $100. And I was like, what? And I'm looking at the stampings on it. It says Zassenhaus. I'm like, what? So big flywheel Zassenhaus grinder. And if you see the video, you'll see what the table looks like. Now that I've been looking at the table for over a day, for about a day now, I think it's kind of cool. But I'm going to use it for this project. So I'm going to tear it all apart eventually. But I can't find anything about this grinder. So if you know anything about this grinder, this old Zassenhaus crank grinder, and it's massive. Like if I do a Google search for Zassenhaus grinder, flywheel grinder, all that stuff, nothing comes up. I get like the little Bogotas and the Santiagos. I'm like, that's totally not it, right? I mean, this is a big honking grinder. So if you know anything about it, let me know. I'm really interested to learn more about it. I believe, so Zassenhaus was started in the 1860s, like 1867 or something like that. So I'm presuming that because of the era that those enterprise grinders came out, this must be like a late 1800s grinder. And it's actually in very nice condition for the age. So George says, wait, is that the way you learned to make an Americano back in the... No, well, this is how we drank Americanos. Because I'm not a big fan of like big coffees. Like I was like small coffees. Because you know what, to me, it's like, okay, so here's where I made a kind of a change over the years. And mostly in 2025. I've always historically, I've never drank coffee. Right? I didn't like coffee at all when I was young. I didn't like coffee at all when I was growing up. As I got older, I didn't like coffee at all. I only got to liking coffee because I got into the coffee business and I knew that I had to actually understand it and know it. And then I was lucky enough to fall in with mentors who were actually in the highest echelons of coffee, and I went from there. So for me, coffee was a relatively new thing that I didn't really get into until 2002. So I learned to drink coffee because I wanted that flavor, that experience, rather than needing a caffeine vessel to accompany whatever I was doing, my breakfast, to start my day, whatever. So for me, it was really just about, while at Heinz and at Spro, we would, if you ordered Americano, it would be 12 ounces, right? That would be our de facto standard. But this is just the way that I enjoy it, right? I like that concentrated flavor. I like just the compact size. I think it's a beautifully, perfectly sized drink. And for many years, I would buy coffee at places and I'd get like a 12-ounce coffee and I would maybe drink 8 ounces of it, maybe drink half of it. Now in more modern times in 2025, as I've been going around and like driving places and stopping at donut shops, I might get a bigger coffee, like a 12-ounce or maybe even a 16-ounce once in a while, because you know what? I've got 3 donuts and sometimes the 8-ounce coffee and the 12-ounce coffee just isn't enough. So that's kind of my coffee theory. But if it's really just for me to enjoy without anything else, or with something that I'm small and can control, I like the smaller amounts of coffee. I don't really need a lot of it. That's kind of why I'm more into this smaller drink. But if you were to come to Spro and order Americano, it would not be this. You would have to specify that you wanted this. Like we would make this for you, but you'd have to ask for it. And not many people would ask for it. But it says, I saw this Aston House. How come the only hand grinders you like are the ones that take like, well, like I said, this one is, in this case, it's less, like, I think the Zassenhaus thing is that I think the fact that it's a Zassenhaus is just icing on the cake. Like, I just love the fact that it's this Zassenhaus. I've always liked Zassenhaus grinders. But really, I was just looking for a huge grinder to go on this huge piece of wood. So it'd be proportionally, it would look proportional, right? That's really the main reason. It could have been a Fuji Royal. It could have been an Enterprise. The key was that I wanted to be proportionally sized, and I also didn't want to spend a ton of money on it, right? I mean, we're talking coffee grinders, not Festool, right? So, Parkville says, putting together that grinder will be a labor of love, not my cup of, but machining the parts. Well, that's the thing I like about it, is that I don't know if there's going to be much machining. Like, whoever modified it into a table basically took an iron steel bar, tack welded it onto one of the cast iron arms. So I'm like, well, I mean, I'll actually call my brother because he's a welder, so he would know better than I would, because I would just take an angle grinder to it and grind the hell out of it. Maybe that's not the best way to go, but he'll know how to take care of that, and then remove that. And then probably, I think that, I was looking at, as I was editing that video last night, I realized, even though I was showing some shots, I said, I don't know if the burrs are in there. Like, you could feel that I think if I look closely, you could see they're kind of in there. So I think the burrs are going to be still there. So I think it has all the parts. Maybe there's a way to resharpen the burrs, or maybe not. Maybe it just become a showpiece somewhere for someone. I don't know, but I just have this idea in my mind that I want to explore, and it wasn't. I was able to get it for $75, so they agreed to that. I was like, cool, awesome, I'll come get it. Which I'm glad, because Zassenhaus, I would imagine it, probably would have cost a lot more. Parkville says, I haven't eaten a cider donut in over a decade at this. Really? You should get one of those Japanese bakeries to make one for you. Be like, hey, press these apples, get the juice out of them, reduce it, and then put it into this with some nutmeg and cinnamon, and then you can make millions of dollars at it. I will get Mr. Donuts about once every other week, but it's just pondering. What's pondering? I'm not pondering or pondering. That's a nice combination. These are great donuts. When I was in New England, I stopped off at a gourmet grocery store, and I walked in, and I saw, ooh, apple cider donuts, awesome. And I'm thinking, I wonder what they do different up here in New England. Are they better? Are they local produced? And I walk up to the display and I look at it, and I realize it says from a bakery in York, Pennsylvania. And I was like, I know that bakery. I've been there. I've had their donut. It's good. But I was like, really? We're in New England. We're in Massachusetts. You have shipped donuts from Pennsylvania to here. You must have bakeries that are making apple cider donuts somewhere in this area. So I was kind of disappointed. I asked one of the guys that worked there, I said, hey, why do you have these donuts from Pennsylvania? He's like, well, I don't know. He's like, I didn't buy, but he's like, if you're looking for locally made donuts, you just got to drive around. And I did see some signs as I was driving around. Like at these like farms that were like, come on Saturday and Sunday, and we have donuts. I was like, oh, man, if only I had the time to go do that. Totally do that. But I got to get running because we're supposed to go up to Pennsylvania after I'm done here, because we're going to be looking at some Festool. I found last night there was a guy advertising a saw, a miter saw. And I was like, oh, that's a hell of a good deal. So I messaged him, but he hasn't messaged me back. And I was like, man, what's going on with this guy, right? Good deal. So Matt calls me this morning. He's like, hey, did you see this? I was like, yeah, I saw it, but I messaged the guy. He totally didn't respond yet. And I'm like waiting for him. He's like, well, he wrote back to me. I said, I'm going to go have a look at it, but I don't know if I'm going to buy it. I said, well, let's go have a look. So I was like, well, let's go look. So that's what I got to go do now. All right. So I guess that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much. Good to see all of you. We're going to be doing more. We're going to try to move back to our regular schedule of live streams. I will one more tomorrow, of course. And I think we're going to do one. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or the next day, but I've got one that we're going to try making coffee with different waters to see, does it have much impact? So I've got waters from Wolfboro, New Hampshire, Scarborough, Maine, Hull, Massachusetts, and then we'll use water from here, and we'll see, like, what is the difference? How much of an impact is it going to have on this coffee? And I've got coffee from a place called Lucas Coffee Roasting, which is Troy Lucas and his wife Jenica are really old friends of mine in the business. I stopped by there in Wolfboro while I was up in New Hampshire, and they gave me this mug. I shouldn't be showing this. It's actually not been released yet, so don't tell anyone. But that's what's coming up. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or maybe Monday. I just got to take the time to get it all prepared. Water, the most main thing, coffee. Well, I'm not doing we're not going to do we're not going to do this. What is this stuff here? We're not going to do this third wave stuff. I don't know why it's actually also pillowing. Look at this. It's ballooning. I don't know why. I think there's probably CO2 that's expanding here or something. Something is happening, and I'm expecting this to explode at some point in time. Because as you know, this is not how they started. They actually look more like, there's actually a whole bunch of them that are puffing. Right, look at that. Look at all these that are puffing. And then this is what they look like normally, right? This is the normal non-puffiness. But we're not talking about doing this, right? I'm not really interested in getting water and, formulating it to the perfect formulation that the SCA or whoever recommends. I'm more interested in seeing, we talk so much about water quality and so much about shaping water. What I'm really interested in is how does water really affect the coffee, right? In Baltimore, we're lucky because Baltimore, we have very nice waters. The city water supply. Where I live, we don't have this water. I have to go pour it in from the shops. But the water from Baltimore City is actually for coffee quality is excellent. There's only one thing that's slightly off, and I never bothered to people go through reverse osmosis. They do all this work to get their stuff, and I'm we don't need that. This one little variant is not worth my time to spend $10,000, $20,000 on our own system. But one of the things I've been thinking about is that'd be fascinating to me is let's say with the meticulous. I think the meticulous, this is why I like the meticulous. I'm really interested in that. Is that let's say you took the meticulous, then you could take waters from different parts of the world, use them to make an espresso, and give the impression of what that coffee would taste like in those cities. So if I brought water from LA, brought water from Paris, we could run it and pull the shots, or just pour over coffee. That's probably what we're going to do for this show: is pour over coffee, and then see how does that water impact the flavor of the coffee. To me, that is very fascinating and interesting. And you could take people on a tour of how the water is. That's my thought, at least. That's what I'm thinking about right now. That's why I'm not really scheduled it out yet, because I'm not sure exactly where we're going to go with that. Mom says, have a great day. Well, have a great day to you. Andrew says, off to DC, run for a donut. Oh, nice. Hopefully they have. I hope they do. I hope they do. From says, water is really important. Third wave is not the greatest, though. I'm not in disagreement. I like, see, here's the thing. I like the idea. If I was to open locations of Spro across the world, I don't know if I would change the water in those parts of the world. Maybe. But I think I would like to see how the coffee expresses itself in different places. Because, maybe that's something to be celebrated rather than, hated on. How do you so let's say it really affects it poorly. Is there a way to overcome that by your coffee selection and your roasting technique and the things and the brewing methodology? Right? Because we talk about things like bagels and pizza and all that kind of stuff and baguettes. And everyone's oh, it's the water that makes the difference. Okay, cool. So maybe the water can make an impression, a more memorable impression, depending on where you are. I don't know. I'm still, I've been thinking about this kind of off and on for the last like 15 years. Probably in such an invented cottage industry, sometimes I get, the Bumble Brother says, sometimes I get the impression that it's just, it's always one of those things where you just kind of like, get a little bit like, maybe you do it for such a long time, so you feel like I'll be honest, I get to be like that. Within the industry circles, I can be very much that person. Like one of my friends online, he was talking about, oh, do you think the SCA is going to like not come to the United States? I was like, oh no. There's no way the SCA will not have their USA show. They make too much. There's too much attendance, and they make way too much money out of it. So, guarantee they're never going to give that show up. So, there's that. There's that. PowerPlant says pizza, the New York water thing has been debunked. I mean, I think New York pizza's okay. I like other pizzas. What do people say it's the water that makes it? And that's why I'm saying. So what people say the water makes, and New York bagels, they say the water makes Parisian baguettes, things like that. So, I think it'd be interesting. I love the passion of the hardcores, but it's just not that serious. I tend to be along that lines in many respects. One of the things as I've been in the woodworking sphere and like participating on forums there, one of the things I've been very conscious of is not to be as cynical as I normally am. Like, I'll read people's posts and I'm just like, oh God, that's just dumb. But I never want to say that because, it's like, it doesn't really forward the mission of like, getting to know people. And so what I've been doing is I've just been like very supportive and just like sharing my thoughts and experiences. And like, actually, I was surprised recently because some people were like, oh man, I'm glad you, like one guy was like, I'm glad you posted because I really wanted to, because he posted a question. He's like, I really wanted to hear your thoughts on it. And I was like, I guess that's because I'm not acting like a dick to people. You know how people are on online forums, they're just like, So, and then actually one of the forums asked me recently if I'd be interested in being a moderator. And I was like, really? Like, I'm not that experienced in this. I may make it sound like I'm that experienced, but I'm not really that experienced. And this forum is one that's filled with like people that are truly like experts. And I'm like, you guys must know that I'm like a charlatan. So to be asked, I was like, oh, that's a very much a nice honor. After the donut, says Andrew, going to get me some Fuji apples. Fuji apples, that's good, that's good. And George liked today's topic. All right, well, that's good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, George. We're going to be back again tomorrow with more coffee and more questions and maybe some answers. So hope you have a great one. Good to see all of you. Thanks for coming by and hanging out with me. Back again tomorrow, and see you then.